Why is it that when you talk to people born in the 1970s or 1980s, you instinctively understand their pace, their patience, their comfort with silence? And yet, when you step into the world of those born after 2000, you adapt just as easily to algorithms, platforms, games, instant feedback, constant updates. You speak both languages fluently, and still, somehow, you rarely feel that you fully belong to either side. You remember a childhood without the internet, when cassette tapes had to be rewound, CDs required saving up for, and when a landline rang, everyone in the house looked up at once. You also live comfortably inside an adulthood shaped by information. Smartphones always within reach, social media, messaging, data, and efficiency quietly structuring daily life. You understand both worlds. You survive in both. And yet, precisely because of that, there's a subtle unnamed space inside you, a feeling that never quite disappears. Why is it that your sense of timing feels different? You're not slow. You're not resistant to change. You see the value of speed, but you still remember when slowness felt safe. You function inside fast systems, yet rarely feel absorbed by them. You understand noise, but are moved more deeply by quiet. It's as if two memories coexist inside you, two versions of the world that never fully overlap. And why is it that, looking back, you sometimes feel like you understood change earlier than most? Not because you matured too fast, not because you reject what's new, but because you witnessed something firsthand. You watched a world, one that didn't require constant recording, slowly fade away. And you watched another system, one that demands constant availability, response, and visibility, rapidly take its place. You didn't miss your era. You lived through two of them. So today, this isn't about which generation is better, and it isn't about claiming that something is wrong with the world. We're talking about a psychological reality that's rarely articulated clearly. What happens to a person's attention, rhythm, sense of solitude, and way of relating to the world when they grow up experiencing both a childhood without the internet and an adulthood saturated by information? This isn't confusion, and it isn't falling behind. It's a unique psychological position, one that belongs specifically to those born in the 1990s. People born in the 1990s didn't learn about change by looking back. They were there. Their growth unfolded across two fundamentally different world structures, an older system that moved slowly, with clear boundaries, and a newer one that accelerated rapidly, constantly reorganizing itself. Before they had time to fully settle into the world, the rules began to shift. Communication was rewritten, pace was compressed, and being seen transformed from an occasional experience into a continuous expectation. The 1990s generation didn't choose to enter a changing world. They happened to be standing inside it at the exact moment it changed. That places them in a rare psychological position, not observers, not late arrivals, but direct witnesses to the collapse of one structure and the construction of another. They remember when life had clearer boundaries, day and night felt distinct, work didn't fully invade personal time, and not being reachable wasn't immediately interpreted as indifference or rejection. These memories aren't nostalgia. They function as a psychological reference point. Because having experienced a different way the world could operate, people born in the 1990s tend to stay alert to change. They're less likely to assume that any system is inherently correct or permanently stable. This is why two seemingly opposite traits often coexist within them. On one hand, they're highly adaptable, quick learners, fast adjusters, capable of navigating new tools and norms. On the other hand, they maintain an internal distance, a quiet awareness that systems can shift, rules can dissolve, and what feels permanent rarely is. So when you occasionally feel like you're standing in the middle, it's not because you belong nowhere. It's because you're among the few who truly understand the weight of both sides. The so-called in-between position was never a weakness. It's the clearest vantage point during a time of transition, and also, inevitably, the loneliest one. For people born in the 1990s, childhood was not surrounded by constant stimulation. Slowness wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was simply how the world worked. Information required waiting. Connection required planning. If you wanted to see someone, you had to agree on a time and a place. And if you missed something, it was often truly gone. There was no easy rewind, no automatic archive, no assumption that every moment would be captured, stored, or shared. Inside that environment, the nervous system developed differently. When life couldn't be endlessly recorded or replayed, the brain learned a quiet but powerful rule. This moment matters because it's happening now. Attention naturally stayed with what was present instead of splitting itself between experience and performance, between living something and preparing to show it later. This early condition created something subtle yet foundational, an internal sense of safety. That's why many people born in the 1990s don't rely heavily on constant external feedback to feel real or grounded. Silence doesn't threaten them. Being alone doesn't automatically feel empty. This isn't a personality trait. It's an environment-shaped pattern. A nervous system that grows up without continuous observation builds trust in its own inner anchor. Later, when technology rapidly expanded, bringing constant recording, sharing, and instant response. This generation already carried another reference point. They learned how to use the tools, but their sense of presence never fully depended on them. So if you notice that you're not afraid of quiet, that you don't feel pressured to justify every moment, that you don't need an audience to confirm that something mattered, that doesn't mean you're out of step with the world. It means you learned early on how to exist fully without being watched. And that foundational safety is still quietly supporting you today. People born in the 1990s rarely notice one defining pattern in their lives. They are always adapting. The world they grew up in never stayed stable for long. Rules shifted, pace accelerated, tools kept changing, standards were rewritten again and again. So they learned how to switch modes early. They know when to speed up, when to adjust, when to translate themselves into a system that hasn't fully formed yet. From the outside, this looks like competence. The 1990s generation is often described as highly adaptable, capable in almost any environment, rarely visibly overwhelmed. But what's less visible is the cost of that adaptability. Because when adaptation becomes constant, there are very few moments when self-adjustment is no longer required. Even during rest, the mind stays partially alert, ready to respond, recalibrate, or respond again. This isn't burnout in the dramatic sense, it's subtler than that. A low, continuous expenditure of energy. You're not pushing yourself to the limit, yet you rarely feel completely relaxed. You understand how to rest, but it's difficult to fully shut down the system that's been trained to anticipate change. So when you catch yourself thinking, "Nothing is wrong, but I feel tired," that's not a personal failure. It's the psychological imprint of growing up in a world that never stopped changing. As someone born in the 1990s, you were rarely allowed to live inside a reality that didn't require adjustment, and that ongoing vigilance, quiet, invisible, uncelebrated, is one of the reasons ease can feel so elusive. The resilience of people born in the 1990s is often misunderstood, not because it's weak, but because it's quiet. This generation rarely proves persistence through dramatic gestures or visible struggle. What they learned instead was how to keep things moving when conditions became unstable. When systems shifted, when structures loosened, when direction kept changing, their instinct wasn't to protest first. It was to hold things together. Not because they didn't care, but because they understood something early on. The world rarely waits for you to feel ready. So responsibility became habitual. Uncertainty was absorbed internally. Emotion was postponed. Stability was preserved, even if it came at a personal cost. Over time, resilience stopped being a reaction. It became internalized. Rather than expecting stability from the outside, they learned to construct it within themselves. This kind of strength rarely receives recognition. It doesn't look like ambition, it doesn't announce itself, and it's almost never labeled as drive. But it is precisely this quiet endurance that allowed them to stay upright through repeated transitions. You may not feel particularly strong. You might even wonder if you've simply learned to tolerate too much. But the truth is simpler. This understated resilience is what kept you from being displaced when the ground kept shifting. You weren't free of pressure. You just learned how to carry it without letting it collapse you. It's not a flashy kind of strength, but it lasts, and it's still what's supporting you as you continue forward. People born in the 1990s are often misread as not trying very hard. They don't constantly declare their goals. They don't narrate their effort. They rarely turn progress into performance. Yet those who work closely with them often notice a quiet contradiction. When something truly matters, they're usually the ones making sure it gets done. Psychologically, this isn't a lack of motivation. It's a different motivational structure. During their formative years, rewards were rarely immediate. Effort and outcome were separated by time, patience, and sometimes uncertainty. As a result, their brains learned something early. Action doesn't need instant recognition to be valid. When motivation isn't dependent on constant feedback, behavior becomes quieter. Not because less energy is involved, but because direction has already been internalized. This kind of person doesn't require applause to maintain momentum. They care more about whether the process is complete than whether anyone noticed them moving. From a psychological perspective, this reflects an internally driven reward system. It allows someone to keep acting even in environments where encouragement is absent or where effort goes unseen. And this is exactly why people born in the 1990s are so often underestimated. Their work isn't designed for visibility. They don't rely on anxiety to push themselves forward. They don't compare constantly to define their worth. Instead, they quietly align with an internal standard and then move toward it step by step. This form of effort isn't loud, but it's remarkably durable. It doesn't burn brightly and disappear. It endures. In a culture that equates volume with effort, this silence is often mistaken for disengagement. But in reality, it's one of the most stable forms of persistence there is. And it remains one of the least replaceable strengths of the 1990s generation. When you connect everything that came before, a clearer picture begins to emerge. What formed within people born in the 1990s is not confusion, it's structure. In psychology, there's a concept called emotional tolerance. It describes the ability to remain relatively stable in the presence of uncertainty, delay, and pressure. The nervous system of the 1990s generation was shaped precisely under these conditions. They experienced slowness and then acceleration. They knew depth and later adapted to fragmentation. This dual exposure cultivated a rare capacity, the ability to stay clear in complexity and to keep functioning amid fluctuation. They are less likely to be completely overtaken by short-term emotion, less likely to overreact to every change, not because they are numb, but because an internal regulation system has already been built. This strength isn't obvious. Psychology doesn't often highlight it because it doesn't look dramatic, but it is quietly invaluable. It means you can keep moving without needing certainty first. It means you don't have to rebuild yourself every time the world shifts. It means that when external systems destabilize, you can still preserve internal order. Many people born in the 1990s don't realize what they're using every day. They're operating with a high adaptation, low exhaustion psychological mode. It doesn't chase extremes. It doesn't depend on instant reward. Instead, it calibrates for long-term living. This capacity hasn't been properly named yet. Because it's not loud, it doesn't rush, and it doesn't convert easily into slogans. But it is exactly this quality that allows you to stand at the intersection of two worlds without breaking. It isn't the result of compromise. It is an advantage, still forming, and you are standing right as it becomes visible. When seen from a wider distance, people born in the 1990s were not unlucky. They were simply placed where change had to be witnessed firsthand. You didn't learn about transformation through books, documentaries, or retrospection. You were inside it before your sense of self was fully formed. You remember a world that moved slowly, so you understand what true focus feels like. You also lived through acceleration, so you understand systems, efficiency, and reality. This isn't a burden. It's completion. Many people live their entire lives inside a single version of the world. You lived through two. You know how connection was built before algorithms shaped attention, and you know how to survive without being swallowed by digital saturation. You know what deserves patience, and when decisiveness matters. You weren't adapting for too long. You were integrating. In psychology, the rarest ability is not speed. It is the capacity to maintain a continuous sense of self while everything around you changes. And that is exactly what shaped you. You don't need to apologize for your pace. You don't need to be pushed to become louder, faster, or more visible. You've already proven something essential. You can move between systems without losing internal order. You are not the generation caught in the middle. You are the generation that walked both worlds. And what comes next is no longer about adaptation. It's about choosing how you want to live from here on. This is Felix. May understanding bring you closer to yourself, and may you treat the growing version of you with patience and care. See you next time.